Hello everyone and welcome to Kickstart, a show where we profile successful startups and the stories behind their founders. Today we are joined by Mada Seghete. Mada, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi guys, I'm Mada. I'm one of the founders and I lead marketing at Branch.
Awesome. So Mada, your story starts in Silicon Valley where you immerse yourself in the startup culture. Can you talk to us about sort of the first days of being in those in the startups and the experiences and lessons that you learned?
Sure. So I actually it all started at Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
I had some visa issues. My H-1B didn't go through, so I decided to go back to school. So I came from the East Coast where I had done undergrad in engineering. And I came to Stanford and I did the master's right after undergrad. And Stanford was getting started, and there was something called a design school.
Uh-huh.
And the design school now is actually pretty big and a big part of Stanford, but at the time we were just getting started.
Yeah.
And they were in this like trailer in the middle of nowhere and kind of far away from. And I took the first class offered that was outside design school students, and it was called Quicks and Bricks. And we worked with startups. We were like consulting for startups, and I had never even understood the concept of a startup.
Yeah, every business is a startup, right?
Well, I think for me it's like my dream. I grew up in communist Romania, and then Romania got privatized. And then coming to the States, I had this dream that I would work for a really large company, which I did for a while. I worked for Siemens Medical as an engineer. Okay. And then coming to Stanford, I was like, oh, what is this idea of a small company? And like, I've never heard of these companies. Mm-hmm. So I decided to kind of give it a try, and I worked as a consultant for some cool startups. Yeah. And I got to experience what it meant what the kind of problems startup founders had. Mm-hmm. And it was really exciting. And I felt like, wow, and I took another class and I'm concentrating in design school classes. I made my own concentration. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. You get to start something from scratch. You get to change an industry. Mm-hmm. But I remember thinking, but it's not my path. I'm probably going to go and get a job in a big company. Yeah. And I remember walking. I was helping one of our professors, who was also an investor, Michael Deering. And I was helping him after a class take stuff back to his car. Uh-huh. And I remember telling him, it's like, wow, these startups are so cool, but, I could never do something like that. And he stopped, and he put the stuff down. He's like, Mada, if you don't, who do you think will? I was like, oh. He's like, yeah, you're doing really well, you have an engineering degree, you're at Stanford. Who else do you think starts this company? Yeah. And I was like, wow. Yeah, I could do it one day, maybe.
Mm-hmm. What a profound moment that must have been for you.
Yeah, it was. Mm-hmm. I think it was definitely the moment where I started thinking maybe I could start a company one day. And that had nenever crossed my mind growing up. And even in my undergrad at Cornell, I took an entrepreneurship class, and I remember thinking, oh yeah, this is just a cool exercise to understand how people start businesses. This will never be me. Until that moment when someone believed in me. Yeah. And it's it is a very powerful moment.
Yeah, of course. So Stanford Business School not only gave you that powerful moment where you had confidence to kind of pursue your dream, but it also is where you met your co-founders, correct?
Yeah.
So can you talk to us about meeting your co-founders and sort of how the story started from there?
So actually, funny story, I actually ended up leaving Stanford, going and working for a startup for 4 years. Then I came back to Stanford for business school, so I have 2 masters from Stanford. Nice. I think the time in between was very interesting because I learned a lot from being in a startup. Mm-hmm. And I think it is important to learn what it feels to work in a startup before you start your own.
Yeah.
And then I came to business school, and when I came to business school, I had a very different mindset. I knew I wanted to start a company on my own. Yeah. I think the time spent, the few years that I had spent working in startups, helped me kind of understand that, yes, I could do this myself. But there were a lot of things at the startup I worked for did well, and a lot of things I would have done very differently.
Yeah.
And I felt...
Do you care to share? What would you have done differently? What were the lessons that you learned when you were there?
Sure. I think some of the lessons are really around building culture and building a more cohesive group of people that are really inspired to go after the future. And I think the other thing was really thinking, how can you really have a big vision, and how can you keep iterating until you actually hit product market fit and make money? And I think in that company we were perhaps, I think, like, the vision wasn't maybe as big, and then even the execution, people weren't as motivated.
Yeah.
And I think there was something that kind of, it felt like I wasn't super motivated always to go to work, and I wanted to build a company where people came in thinking that they can win in the industry. And the company I was in, we were definitely like the second or third, and it's a very demotivating place to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of like the winners in that industry did a lot of things that were very interesting and like demotivating us, and they were really winning. And I wanted to build a company that was the winner in the industry, and that was kind of, and I thought a lot about like, how I would structure the culture differently, how the vision needs to happen, how aggressive you need to be when you want to go against competition, how innovative you have to be instead of copying things. And
it seems like those lessons really came into play later once you guys started Branch,
definitely.
Right? That's awesome.
And like my co-founders also had their own experiences. Alex worked for a company here in semiconductors, and that company rose and fell, and I think he had a lot of lessons. So coming in together and learning and using all the things we learned from startups that we had been in that had a lot of trouble, like the startup I was in had to lay off more than half of their employees, and I had to live through that. Alex's also had a lot of issues. So going through that and having been through struggling startups, I think we learned a lot about what it takes to win. And also we were prepared also for the worst if things went wrong. We had been through that. We knew how that looked like. And we were also, we were pretty sad that this was never going to happen to us. So we always had backup plans to the backup plans. We were never those like idealistic founders that had a vision, and that was the vision. We were like, well, that's a vision, but if that doesn't work, this is what we're going to do. If that doesn't work. Like, we always had our employees in mind, and we never want to be the startup that had to lay off.
That's valuable. So talk to me about, so Alex is one of your founders. So when you and your founders came together, what was the first company that you guys created?
Yeah, so I met my co-founders in business school. And I think two of them were my classmates, and the third one actually was an undergrad that was introduced to us by investors. And my two business school co-founders and I, we all had an engineering background. Then we had all come to business school wanting to start a company. And we kind of found each other. Well, I found Alex, convinced him to work with me, and then we got Mike. And we applied to actually a design school class that was taught by the same professor that had told me I could do it 5 years earlier. It was called Launchpad, and we had a project there, and then we kind of came together a team. And then over the summer, we decided to forego our offers. I had I had an offer from Apple to be a product manager on their ads team, and we decided to not take those and actually take a chance and work together. And we worked together on a photo book app called Kindred. And it was pretty cool. We built an app on both iOS and Android. I built all the web stuff and all the design. Alex coded it, and Mike built all the working with the printing providers and getting the books. So we were a pretty good team. Sold a ton of books. Raised some money, and then when second year came around, we were really running a business, which was tough, I would say, to be in school and to run a business that's actually sending up to customer support, and people are calling you and complaining about their books, and it was definitely one of the hardest years of my life.
Very chaotic.
Very chaotic. It feels like you can't concentrate on anything. You have this business, but then there's classes and social activities. But I think we learned a lot during that time, and turns out printing is a very hard space to be. Very small margins, a lot of competition. So we we really struggled, and we were having a really hard time getting our app discovered. We felt like we only had two options. Either we spend all our funding money on ads, which is most what we did. We spent a lot of money on Facebook. It doesn't seem that much money now, but to me then, starting a company seemed like a lot. And then trying to get featured in the stores, which we also did. But when those features end and the money ends, you realize that like as an app, it's very hard to get organic traffic. We started thinking, what can we do to change that? So we were thinking we could build a referral program where people invite others, or a sharing program. I started a book and I share it with you. And we realized that we were trying to do this, that there was this broken experience. There was no way when someone came from an ad or from an invite and they went and then downloaded the app, there was no way of knowing where they came from. Like this, install was like a wall that you couldn't pass any information through.
Yeah.
And that was crazy to me. I remember going and calling my friends on Facebook, and I was like, why can't I get the ID? Why can't I know as soon as the app opens, which campaign they came from? And they're like, oh no, we just don't do that.
Yeah.
What? So I kept bugging Alex to figure out a way to solve this, so we could build all these like growth initiatives. And he had found a solution. And kind of around the same time we were about to graduate, we started building the solution. We were talking to others, trying to figure out how they did it, and realized no one had a solution. And when we told them about what we were building, they were like, we want it. Like, oh. And it just seemed like this was a much bigger opportunity than Kindred, our photo app. So we decided to maybe give it a try in parallel. So we kept the app going for 3 or 4 months. We ended up finding a buyer for the app, and then started focusing on Branch full time. And you know, Branch is very different. I think if you're ever starting a company and you hit product market fit, there is something incredibly magical about it, and it's very different. I remember when you ask your potential customer if they're interested in your product, and I've done this because we had other ideas outside of Kindred. You go and you ask them, and you know, they're like, maybe, sure, I would consider it. Even with Kindred, we would go, our target was moms, and we would ask them, and like, yeah, I don't know, I use this other thing, I'm not that interested. But with Branch, we would go and ask people, and they were like, everyone said, I need this. And maybe, you know, in the early days, there were things like, but I'm not sure, you know, you're an early company. But there was no one ever said, no, I don't need this. They were like, if you can prove to me that you're a stable company, I will use this. And everyone said this, and it was over and over, and it was like people came to us instead of us going to them.
Yeah.
People had heard that we did this, and it was crazy. It was magical.
Yeah, well, there's something to be said about creating solutions for your own problems when you're creating a business, right? And obviously, if you're having them, other businesses must be as well, and that's probably why they were coming to you.
Yeah, so it's a very, I think, you know, when I was in business school, we learned a lot about vitamins and painkillers, and some companies are vitamins and some like. And it's not that vitamins can, you know, look at Snapchat and Facebook. There are vitamins that succeed, but I think the likelihood of success of a vitamin is much lower than the likelihood of success of a painkiller.
Yeah.
Kindred was definitely a vitamin, and Branch is definitely a painkiller.
Very cool. So talk to us about the cross-platform journey and how Branch is supporting that.
Yeah, so I think even from the early days, the problem was that, you know, when you think about the user and where they're interacting, where they're discovering you, is not always in an app store, right? So even with Kindred, we would do things on Facebook, and we'd like have ads in different places, and we had a really cool website that people actually discovered. And how do we take people from that into the app? How do we create cross-platform journeys? And obviously Kindred was a small app, but think about, you know, a really large retailer like Macy's, where the users might, you know, engage in social media platforms, on a website. And the idea is that regardless of where they engage, you should like give them a seamless experience and take them to the place where you think they will have the best experience at a certain point in time. Maybe at the beginning of their journey, the best experience is on the website. But later down the funnel, maybe when they're about to buy, they'll have a much better experience of buying in the app. How can you bridge those journeys, and how can you make it seamless? So if I'm looking at a really nice dress on a website, and I get a banner that says, "Hey, buy this in app." When I get the app, I'm actually taken to the same thing, and maybe I get a discount because I got the app, right? So those kind of like seamless experiences is where Branch comes in, and we were a linking platform that enables these experiences, but also helps brands measure.
Yeah.
So we actually feel that experience and measurement are very tied together, because having good measurement can help you have better experiences. If you really understand where someone came from and all the things they did before, you can give them the right experience at the right time. So we give you that data both in like a dashboard aggregate, so you understand how your users get your app, but also like live, when someone opens the app, you can get all that information about the user, so you can customize and personalize the experience for them.
It's amazing.
So in a way, we're like a data identity company, because we understand who a user is across devices, across browsers. But we're also a linking company because we use that to help bridge those journeys across platform.
Very cool. So while we're on the data topic, let's talk sort of about data and privacy. In 2019, it's a very sensitive subject. So how does Branch sort of approach data privacy and making sure that all the stuff that you guys are collecting remains anonymous? And
so we have 3 principles, and we stand very strongly by them. The first principle is that we limit the data we collect. Sometimes we will collect data to do matching between, where someone is, between like a web browser and someone in an app. None of that data is personable and sold data based on things that users can either block or reset, like cookies or the IDFAs. But we also limit things that if we use IP to make a match, we then delete the IP, so we actually don't know where the user is. So we limit the data we collect, and we also we actually tell our customers to not send us any identifiable data through the links. They can obviously append data to the links that we can store to an entity, and we ask them to never send anything more than auth tokens, things like that. So that's the first principle. The second principle is that we don't actually give any kind of like data to someone who hasn't seen a user. So we do matching and we understand user journey, but if you have never seen that user, you can never get access to like where they are. So it has to be your user for us to do matching and help to understand the journey on other browsers. You have to actually have seen that user. And then thirdly, we actually make sure that we don't sell or rent our data. So you can always have access only to your data as a company. And while we pool data from everyone just for matching purposes, anything else about the user or their journey with one brand is never accessible to another brand or any other third party. So those are, I think we take privacy incredibly seriously. We talk to Google and Apple about our practices and make sure that we always do things that are on par with their standards, and we never violate either their guidelines or users' privacy.
Awesome. So you wrote a really cool article that I read before our interview, and it was about culture and establishing and scaling culture for a startup. From your experience with Branch and even being an employee at startups before, can you kind of talk about how you do establish a culture and how you scale it to grow and how you affect the tone of the company?
I think it has to start very early. And you have to be you have to like really think about it and not like kind of let it form, but actually build it and think about what do you want your culture to look like. And we started as founders, 4 people in the room. I remember pushing my founder and my co-founders to come up with our values. It was actually a very good exercise, and I think we're all very grateful that we did it so early on. And we worked on those values, and I think the interesting thing that you can see in my article is that our values have evolved. As you get bigger, some of the things that you thought about in the first day in the room change. But the core stays the same, right? Like we've always had being data-driven as something, and the way we named that value has grown over time. Or we've always had, like this idea of execution being really something that we just build stuff, and it doesn't always have to be perfect, but we iterate until it's perfect. And that's part of it. There's like a really core value to Branch, and that's something that has like also shifted over time. But there have been things that weren't there in the early days that we've added over time as the team grew. For example, like we never felt like we had to put collaboration as a written value because we were like 4 people and we collaborated.
You always collaborate.
So it wasn't really, but I think as we get bigger, we realized that it was actually very important to our culture that like when you talk about execution and ownership, that people don't misunderstand that and think like, oh, by myself. And collaboration is actually something that we've always valued, we just never put it down, right? So our values have evolved over time, but the whole idea behind the values is like, yes, you come up with values, but then you have to think of ways you can always like instill them in people. Everything about what you do needs to like be around those values. The way you interview people, the way you give promotions to people, we actually think of the cultural aspect and how is someone like living our values when we give people promotions or when we give them ratings. It's part of our 360 review. So those are things that are like, because they're important, we actually like make them part of our culture and how we live. And even the way I think about the office, like I don't put any art in the office that doesn't have a meaning.
Yeah, like, I like your bookshelves.
Yeah, cool. It has a story. Like the bookshelf has a story that we own, like our furniture, and we build it ourselves. And the room names remind us of our failures and the fact that it's okay to fail at Branch. Like everything, I think, kind of works together and builds this. Like it all comes down into your values.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what your values are, you can have this culture where people kind of feel lost. Like some people think that this is the culture. Some people think that this is what we should do. So it's important that you do this early. I've seen companies that like are trying to do it now and there are 100 people. I would tell you it's a lot harder to do it when there's 100 people.
Yeah, it seemed like what I took away from that article was very much that culture is intentional. And it takes a lot of work. Yeah. And it evolves over time too.
It evolves over time and you need to understand that. But you can't, like, that evolution needs to be close to the original. It's more like, it's like pivots versus like a completely new idea, right?
Very cool. So 2019, we're done with Q1 in 2019. What are some of the challenges that you guys see ahead of you to sort of continue to grow as a company?
I mean, I think it's been actually we've been very lucky, and also I think we've executed well. We were at the right time when this was a really, linking, attribution were big problems. I think thinking about the growth in 2019, it's a lot about expansion. We now have offices all over the world, and figuring out how to continue to keep a cohesive culture now that we have like 14 offices. I think in terms of going after new markets, like understanding, we've already started doing that, but understanding how markets are different now, they perceive our product differently. I think it's just, we're definitely in a place where the business model is proven and we really are just scaling and executing.
Yeah.
So I would say, I mean, it's a challenge every startup has, but it's also challenging. We're in it right now.
Yeah. How do you have these conversations with prospective clients, customers that maybe aren't as digitally forward as some of the existing customers you have? How do you show value to what Branch can offer them?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to revenue. To a lot of them, it's really if we can help them understand how they can get more revenue by using our product, by basically showing them that a lot of other retailers or other companies, people are more likely to purchase in an app and come back. And if they take people to the app and we can show them how they can do that, they can have a big impact on the bottom line, which is revenue. Or if you take someone from an email and you take them to the app directly and you open the app versus take them to the website, like when they implement a product like that, the revenue goes up like immediately. So it's more like showing them case studies of what other people are doing and also showing them the actual experiences that they could do themselves. Sometimes it's offline to online. We have a lot of brands in Asia that are using deep link QR codes to give people promotions and say, hey, scan this and you're getting a promotion. So they're tracking their own offline traffic, but they're also like actually giving cool experiences to users. So starting to like show them what others are doing, goes a long way.
That's awesome. So one last question I have, and I'd like for you to address the audience with it, is what type of advice would you have for any aspiring entrepreneur to start their own business and follow their dreams?
I think it's really hard, and I personally did not understand how hard it was going to be when I started Branch. I think there is this idea in Silicon Valley that almost says, oh, it's so cool to be a founder. It's not cool to be a founder. It's actually really hard and heart-wrenching. And the advice would be, well, one, to be aware of that and understand what you're getting yourself into, and be okay knowing that you have to make a lot of sacrifices in your personal life, especially in the early years of a company if you want to make it succeed. But two is you have to just keep on building. And you can't, if you really want to be an entrepreneur, you can't, the first idea doesn't work, you can't like let go and say, oh yeah, I'm done. I think keep changing, keep trying, you will get there. I think, I've only talked about Kindred, but we had 2 other ideas. So Branch was really our 4th actual idea that we worked on. And I remember in business school, people were like, how do you guys not give up? And we're like, no, but we want to build a company. Yeah. And I think just keep building, just keep trying. And the other really big advice I have that I think people don't give as much is, if you feel that it's not working and you don't see, if you have a product and you talk to customers and they're not really kind of getting it, you probably are doing the wrong thing. And I know I've heard these stories about, Airbnb who talked to 100 people before they raise money.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Airbnb is that they had customers at the time, and also they actually pivoted a lot in those early days based on the feedback that they got. So if your customers and your investors and people are saying, hey, this is not working, then you should be like, okay, maybe I should try something else. Don't think that, oh, just because 3 companies that heard no a lot and then succeeded work, that your idea will work. You will find 100%. I believe that if you're motivated, you will start a successful company. But be flexible around the idea that we're building, especially if you're getting negative signals from the market.
Very powerful. Thank you.
I feel like a lot of people give the opposite advice. So
yeah, no.
Just keep going, no matter what.
Truth and honesty right there, yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate that. And viewers as well, thank you. Thanks. And we will see you next time.